The race of men, known as the second-born Quenya, Atani, Sindarin, Edain, was created by Eru Iluvatar and stands as the second of his great creations. Unlike the elves, who awoke long before the dawn of the First Age, men emerged into the world at the moment the sun first rose. Their awakening took place in Hildorian, a distant land in the easternmost reaches of Middle-earth. Drawn by the light of the sun, they began their westward migration, a journey spanning centuries and eventually leading some to the lands of Beleriand. Early in their history, men fell under the shadow of Morgoth. There is substantial evidence suggesting that the Dark Lords sought them out soon after their awakening, persuading them to renounce Iluvatar and instead offer their allegiance to him. Many succumbed to Morgoth's influence, but not all. Among them were those who repented and broke free, becoming the ancestors of the noble Edain. Men are marked by what is known as the gift of menmortality. Unlike the immortal elves, whose spirits remain bound to the world even after death, journeying to the halls of Mandos to await renewal or the world's end, men are set free from Arda entirely. They depart the confines of the world, leaving behind its trials and tribulations. Alongside this gift of mortality, Iluvatar endowed men with a unique freedom, the ability to shape their own destiny, unbound by the preordained harmony of the music of the Arnor. However, the corrupting influence of Morgoth instilled in men a fear of their fate, turning what was intended as a blessing into something perceived as a curse. The gift of men, once a token of liberation, came to be viewed by many as a doom. Although all men are related to one another, there are many different groups with different cultures. The Edain, allies of the Elves and Valar during the War of Wrath, were rewarded with the island of Númenor, a star-shaped land between Middle-earth and the Undying Lands. Led by Elros, the Edain became the Númenorians, or Dunedain, the Men of the West. Under Elros, who became King Tar Miniatur, Númenor flourished, and the Dunedain became the most noble and powerful of men, aiding the elves in their battles against Sauron. Over time, the Númenorians grew envious of the immortality of the elves and defied the Valar's ban against sailing west. This led to a division between the king's men, who sought independence from the Valar, and the faithful, who remained loyal to them. Sauron exploited Númenor's pride, persuading King Ar-Pharazôn to attack Valinor in pursuit of immortality. As punishment, Númenor was destroyed, sinking beneath the sea. The surviving faithful established the kingdoms of Gondor and Arnor in Middle-earth, preserving the legacy of the Dunedain. Black Númenorians and Haradrim. The faithful weren't the only Númenorians left on Middle-earth when Númenor sank. When Númenor grew in naval power, many Númenorians founded colonies in Middle-earth. Many of the king's men settled in Middle-earth because they wanted to conquer more lands, and the faithful because they were persecuted by the king. The faithful settled in Pelagia, while the king's men ruled the haven of Umbar and other colonies in the south. When Númenor was destroyed, the king's men became known as the Black Númenorians, and remained hostile towards the faithful of Gondor. Eventually, Umbar was conquered by Gondor in 933 of the Third Age. In Harad, another group of men lived called the Haradrim or Southrons. They were dark-skinned men and waged war on Great Oliphants or Mumakil. They too were hostile to Gondor, though they were subdued in TA 1050 by Hyamendasil. Both Umbar and the Harad were left unchecked by Gondor's waning power by the time of the War of the Ring, and presented grave threats from the south. Many Haradrim fought with Sauron's forces in Gondor. The Easterlings, men from beyond the Sea of Rhûn, frequently served Morgoth and later Sauron. While some, like Bor, aided the Elves, others, such as Ulfang's clan, betrayed them during the Nirneathar Dyad. After Morgoth's defeat, Sauron influenced the Easterlings, who became persistent enemies of Gondor throughout the Third Age. In the year 492 of the Third Age, Gondor defeated the Easterlings under King Remendasil I, but they returned in the year 541, killing him. Gondor later expanded into Easterling territory under Turambar but struggled as its power waned. By the 12th century of the Third Age, the Easterlings had reclaimed much of the eastern Anduin and crushed Gondor's Northmen allies. Easterling tribes like the Wainriders, active from 1856 to 1944 of the Third Age, and Balchoth, emerging after the year 2050, repeatedly threatened Gondor, with notable invasions. The Balchoth was stopped in the year 2510 when the Eotheod came to Gondor's aid. During the War of the Ring, Easterlings were among Sauron's fiercest warriors, fighting in the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. Not all the men who remained east of the Blue Mountains and Misty Mountains during the First Age were tempted by Morgoth or Sauron, and they were joined after the War of Wrath by those of the Edain who did not wish to travel to Númenor. The Northmen who dwelt in Greenwood the Great and other parts of Rhovanion were friendly to the Dunedain, being for the most part their kin, and many of them became Gondorian subjects. The men of Dale and Esgaroth were Northmen, as were the woodsmen of Mirkwood, the tribe of skin changers later known as Beornings, and the Eotheod, who became the Rohirrim or Horse Lord. Dunlendings. When Elendil founded the Kingdom of Arnor, its borders were quickly extended towards the river Greyflood, and Gondor likewise extended up through Enedwaith. In Enedwaith and Minhiriath lived a group of men, related to those men that became the House of Haleth, and they were known as the Dunlendings. They had lived in the great woods that covered most of Eriador, and when the Númenorians started to chop these woods down to build their ships in the Second Age, they earned the hostility of the Dunlendings. The Dunlendings later became bitter enemies of Rohan, as they believed the Rohirrim had stolen their lands. Because of their enmity with the Rohirrim, the Dunlendings served Saruman in the War of the Ring and fought against the Horse Lords in the Battle of the Hornburg. Hobbits. Hobbits were strictly a race of men rather than a separate species. The origin of hobbits is obscure. They first appeared in the records of other men in the middle of the Third Age. But their story is for another moment. And so our story draws to a close, but the story does not end here. Many paths still lie ahead, winding through the rich lore of Middle-earth. If this journey has kindled your curiosity, do not linger in shadow. Subscribe to join us as we uncover more tales of old. Next, we shall turn our gaze to the unassuming folk of the Shire, the Hobbits. Learn of their origins, their quiet lives, and how these small hands shaped the fate of all. Until then, keep the fire of knowledge burning and walk ever forward on this road of discovery. The journey continues, and you are most welcome to join. Subscribe, like, and share to keep the tales alive. Farewell, until we meet again.